Creighton, business reporter with the Irish Independent, and by businessman Dylan Cullen of Appreciating Assets to go through some of the big news stories over the past week. Well, one of the biggest, Dylan, is on the front page of a lot of the papers today and in the middle of all of the others. It's about the buyers spilling onto the streets as the fire sale goes on in the Shelburne Hotel yesterday. And it's about the sell-off of properties on behalf of banks and so on. I think there was something of the order of 81 out of 82 properties sold yesterday, and people just couldn't get enough in terms of there wasn't enough space. The police were going to stop it because they were spilling out onto the streets. And although the auction was in Dublin, most of the buyers came from around the country. What do you make out of that? People are obviously very keen to buy if the price is right.
Well, yeah, I think you can't escape the irony either of the fact that you've got Mr. Chopra walking by after spending a couple of hours being told there's no money in the country. See crowds outside. But I suppose people, if they think there's value there, they're always going to buy.
And something of the order of €15 million changed hands.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that there's probably a lot of people who no longer own those properties who will still be carrying the debt with the banks. So it's not, whilst it is good news, it's good to see activity. It's fantastic to see people get good value and good deals. There's also a lot of disappointed people as well now who have lost their assets and will still be carrying a large burden of debt.
Now you do a little bit of this because Appreciating Assets, your business, is property related, but what you're doing is you're buying or helping to sell properties which Irish people have, maybe abroad, finding other buyers, for instance Russians and so on. Is that right?
Sure.
So is this, as the cycle has moved on somewhere else, is there somebody else going to get into trouble, or how come it's working for you?
Well, mainly the main premise of our business is we help Irish and British customers who would have bought properties in predominantly places like Bulgaria, and we help them resell their properties into the Russian market, are the people that are buying most of the properties in those areas right now. We find the market quite buoyant. In fact, there is plenty of activity in places like Russia and plenty of people looking to buy properties, but because of the size of it, it can be quite difficult to develop your own niche within that market. It's very difficult as an Irish company. You're going to go in and try and say, come buy properties from us. So what we've spent the last number of years doing is developing relationships with qualified and reputable estate agencies throughout places like Bulgaria and Russia to bring buyers to those countries to help our Irish customers find buyers. In fact, last weekend was one of the largest overseas property exhibitions of the year, which was held in Moscow. And already this week we would have had several. Yesterday alone we had 4 viewings in Sunny Beach, which is in Sunset Resort, actually was a development in Sunny Beach, and over the next 6 to 8 weeks we'll probably have 15 inspection trips from Russians coming into place in Bulgaria to try and help find buyers.
And are the Irish people who are selling those properties, are they making losses, significant losses, or what's happening?
In all honesty, yes, we've had customers who have lost money on properties. We've had customers who have broken even, and we've had customers, a minority I will accept, that have made a profit. But in general answers, you shouldn't lose sight of this. The 10 or 15% loss, bringing that cash back into Ireland today has got a hell of a lot more buying power than it had when you spent it in 2007.
It just shows you there are buyers out there, if people, if you can find them, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it is about price, and sometimes it is about going to somewhere like Russia and finding somebody who'll take the asset off you. Siobhan, what do you think, Siobhan Creighton, of what happened yesterday with the sale of those properties in Dublin and people queuing up? It was like a U2 concert almost, stopping the traffic.
I actually was going past Shelburne when all the mayhem kicked off, and the guards were out, the street was closed off, the taxis were all backed up. And then as I was walking past, there was these big bouncers on the door of the Shelburne, and you could hear them saying in very strong English accents, that you could only come in if you had a checkbook and photo ID. They were the only people they were letting inside the door. And it was just such an unusual thing to hear for an auction like this. But, it was a phenomenal sight to see, because we've seen people queuing up for weekends to buy houses in the past, to pay astronomical fees for them. And now people obviously still have some cash. There's a pent-up demand there. People are seeing value. And, there are a lot of people who are frustrated because nothing has happened in the property market for 3 or 4 years now. So they've obviously been watching, maybe want to buy their first home or whatever. So I think there's a fair few first-time buyers who are kind of eager to get in and saw an opportunity to buy there. And then there seem to be investors who just had some cash and saw this as a good move for them.
But it does show you, though, that people are prepared to buy if they think things are going to improve. And in terms of if you buy a property at a price when you think it will in the medium term get better, people will come out. It's like the atmosphere, people's mindset and so on. If you can instill some confidence, people will behave differently. And that seems to be what's missing in this country anyway. Well, in recent years anyway, that people are afraid to invest, they're afraid to do anything, and it affects everything. It has this trickle-down effect, you know.
Well, I think everybody's hoping that they'll find a floor for the property market, because you don't want to be the fool who bought something thinking it was good value and then it drops by another 10 or 20,000, you know, in a very short period of time. The Irish Independent was reporting today that NAMA is going to now has been told to start selling, all the properties it has on its books as well, the residential properties. So, that's going to trigger even more of these big auctions. And you would imagine that there seems to be, they just want to set a floor, because if you can get some sort of a floor and say, well, prices are going to drift between maybe 10 or 20% of this level, well, then it might hold for a while, and then you'll see confidence coming back in, and people say, I know if I buy this, I'm confident I can buy this and I can afford it. Yeah,
well, the next auction is scheduled for the 6th of July. Somebody else who's probably not feeling very good this weekend, particularly when you look at all the papers this morning, Sean Quinn. The Quinn Group, a great entrepreneur, a man who generated thousands of jobs and lots of business and so on. His gamble has resulted in him losing the whole lot, taken over by Anglo-Irish Bank and an American insurance company this week. What do you make out of that, Tim?
Well, I think George summed it up very well, in fairness. And I think one of the things Richard Curran said very well on prime time on Thursday evening. We said that one of the things that we should do is when we're talking about people like Sean Quinn, we should separate them, because Sean Quinn has created thousands of sustainable jobs, people who are still in employment today, regardless of his own personal fortunes or where that they have been. But I think until the full details of how it's been structured for him, it's very difficult to really know what way it'll end up for Mr. Quinn.
Yeah, but he obviously has a lot of debt which can't be paid, and it is conceivable he's looking at the bankruptcy and so on. I don't know. We have a couple of texts in on that issue in relation to the earlier man we had speaking about going to the UK for bankruptcy, and I said that man you interviewed from London is an inspiration. Instead of lying down, he's taking a beating from the disgraceful banks. He's taking positive action to get his life back and create employment again. I wish him luck, and that's from Sean in Wicklow. And another one here, George. I'm disgusted with the pack of hounds that we've become, baying for blood. I'm sorry for men like John. He worked hard all his life and gave hundreds employment. There are two sides to it, of course, because in some cases people made very bad decisions, and they had a very, very high life, and ultimately the taxpayers picking up the tab for all of it. So it's very difficult for people to decide how they feel about it, but there is no doubt it is sad when you see somebody like Sean Quinn losing everything, and given that he's put in so much. What do you make of it, Siobhan?
Yeah, well, I think, there is the personal story behind it. Nobody likes to see anybody being made bankrupt, really, in reality. He was an honest, hard, decent working man for all of his life, and he did great jobs. But, he was a gambler. And taxpayers, the reason that we're all paying so much tax is because that he did gamble to such an extent. We're going to be picking up the bill for this, and for the hubris of many other of these guys who thought they were so almighty, who really had such self-belief in themselves, which is also part of their entrepreneurial make-up, that you need to have this self-belief. But at the same time, it became a destructive quality for him because he didn't know when to pull back. And the fact that he had such diverse businesses, between hotels, cement, whatever, and yet it was the gamble in Anglo-Irish Bank that brought the whole house down, So there wasn't even the carefulness to kind of, dissect this and keep compartmentalize the business. The gamble was so great that he just had such self-belief that he kept throwing more and more money at it on the belief that it would turn, and eventually he would get out of trouble.
Well, I suppose the good thing, Dylan, is the jobs are still there.
Well, that's exactly
poor old Sean, and if that's the right description, I don't know. I'm sure he's licking his wounds, and I'm sure he's kicking himself for the decisions he made, but the jobs which he created go on.
Well, that's the thing that we should never lose sight of, that, exactly as Siobhan said, he did diversify. And there's an awful lot of business courses, and people would actually, people would say, if you just get it right 51% of the time, this man got it right for a hell of a lot more than that of his career. He got it right for about 90% of his career. And yes, he invested, and sometimes in investments, you do follow it. You follow your money, Yeah,
well, maybe he'll live to fight another day. We'll wait and see that. Siobhan and Dylan, thank you both for coming in.